Hey everybody, hope you're doing good. Before we get into today's presentation on sailing, science, and technology, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a background, kind of put it in context for you, especially for those of you that, like me, are kind of new to some of these aspects of sailboats. What Jeff is really kind of talking about is light monohull sailboats versus heavy monohull sailboats. So let's first just define some terms. Displacement. What does that mean? Displacement is the weight of water that a ship displaces when it's floating in the water, which in turn is the weight of the ship and the contents of that ship fully loaded. Now, if you're like me, I'm like, so what? I don't know a thing about what does that mean? Why is that important? The next term that we have to define that Jeff uses is drag. Like, it's a drag, man. What is the nautical definition of drag? Water resistance. So it refers to forces resisting or acting opposite to the object while it's in motion. Why is that important? Who cares if the sailboat has a lot of drag or a little drag? And well, because the more drag there is, the more difficult that hull moves through the water. If it's more difficult, then it needs more sail area, which can be more difficult to handle. And there are implications when the air is super light and it's hard to push that hull through the water, or when the air is really kicking up. An easily driven hull has certain advantages. Jeff is coming from a position, less displacement is better than heavy displacement. So he's a champion of the lighter, modern sailboats as opposed to the traditional heavier sailboats. And he likes them for certain specific reasons. If you don't understand that, then it's hard to get the context of what he's really talking about. Most of us have only heard that a heavy displacement with a full keel or a real strongly modified full keel is the way to go. That's the safest. I always thought fin keels are not safe. They're not safe. But, we got to define what are safety issues. Separate from the ability of the skipper, Jeff addresses some of these issues. And so that's the broader context for what he's talking about. Hopefully this will help you kind of follow with him and track with him. Whether you agree with him or not, all of us are entitled to our own opinion, of course, but we're not entitled to our own set of facts. What I appreciate about Jeff is that, he's done some of the research, because he definitely knows more than I do. And I'm no expert, and I'm not the smartest person in the room. And so I like to listen to those who have a little more experience, a little more knowledge than I do. So hopefully you'll enjoy these videos with that understanding.
Conceptually, when you talk about the price of owning a boat, the ease of handling a boat, to a lesser extent the amount of space on the boat, but to some extent it's all driven by displacement. Because displacement has in it the length, the width, the depth. As you start getting that waterline shorter, the footprint gets smaller. The boat gets deeper in the water, but the footprint gets smaller. And so for that same displacement, you can carry a lot less stuff. There's a term, immersion inches. It talks about the amount of weight that a boat can carry per inch of immersion. And very few small boats tolerate more than 2 or 3 inches, maybe 4 inches at the most of immersion. And that's constant no matter how big up to a certain point the boat is. If you have a boat with a larger area, then for every inch it goes down, it holds more weight. So, a boat like this can carry 4,000 or 5,000 pounds of groceries, of stores, of weight, of spares, of extra sails, of crew. Whereas as you start getting that waterline shorter, the footprint gets smaller. The boat gets deeper in the water, but the footprint gets smaller. And so for that same displacement, you can carry a lot less stuff. When you talk about doing a bottom paint job on a boat, well, the area of the bottom is sort of similar between two 10,000-pound boats. Same amount of bottom paint, same amount of labor. When I get a quote from a boatyard, they'll sometimes quote me by the foot. They'll say 38 foot, or you got 32 foot waterline, this is going to be your price. When I bring the boat in, they pull it out of the water. They go, "Oh no, we'll cut you back because there's no bottom there. It's just not that much boat under the water." So you start thinking about making a transatlantic passage. It's a lot easier to do that with 80 gallons of water than it is to do it on 40. The sail area is the same way. Pretty much to get light air performance at any boat, with the Genoas or whatever special sails you have for that light wind, it takes about a sail area displacement ratio around 30. Now, when you take a boat that's a typical older cruising boat, it has a sail area displacement around 15 to 16, something in that range. And that means that you're having to buy Genoas and larger sails and so on to get to that sail area. And those are much less efficient sails. So you're actually buying a lot more cloth. And those big Genoas really don't tolerate a broad wind range. You can roll them in a little bit. You can roll them in 10 or 15% and still have a decent shape. But after that, you're stuck. You're either going to do a sail change or you're stuck. You're basically motoring or doing some other storm tactic. If you have a cutter and the jib is the right size that you can sail with that, you can drop, get rid of the head sail and leave just the stay sail and get by with that. But most cutters get imbalanced when you do that, which means you end up having to reef the main also to keep your helm balanced. And at that point, you don't normally have enough sail area to get by. So this dependence on low efficiency, large Genoas is not a great thing in terms of ease of handling. So a boat like this, which is a fractional rig, the jib is actually pretty small on this boat, but the sail area displacement ratio gets up in the range of 24, 25. And that's with 100% jib. So most of the time, between a wind range of about 4 or 5 knots, sometimes even less, I have a 110% sail that's cut full like a Genoa. So the leading edge of it's cut like a Genoa. I'm able to use mast bend, which is a very easy thing. It's a single line. You pull it in and you bend the mast, and it also tightens the forestay. And that flattens that jib out. So I can carry that jib into winds into the mid-20s and above. I can carry it into apparent winds, well up over the mid-20s. But true wind, about 23, 24, that sails at the upper end of where it should be doing, what it should be doing. And even if if all you're doing is coastal cruising, if all you're doing is going out for weekends or a week or two at a time, that little extra speed means you can maybe duck a thunderstorm. You can maybe pick one of 50 places that are within reach of where we're sitting right now that I can get to in a 4 or 5 or 6 hour sail versus sailing for an 8 or 10 hour day. And that starts to make a big difference. And boats like this, or boats that sail diesel, boats that have less performance than this, a little bit less performance than this, you're able to sail into much lighter winds, and you're also able to sail into much higher winds more easily. And it's that broad range means that you get more days out on the water, less time cranking the engine. Another factor that happens with modern boats that often gets ignored, which is this idea about being able to maneuver them and handle them. They're easier to tack. They're more reliable to tack. Sometimes with cutter rigs, you can't get them to tack reliably through the wind. And so the greatest luxury to me, and this is subjective, I know it's subjective, is sailing. Then a boat that sails reliably is a tremendous luxury. The part that probably doesn't interest you is the speed. But with that setup at the upper end of that wind range, I can go upwind about 8 knots. I can reach at speeds that get up over 10 knots. Now, frankly, if you don't care about speed, that's a very subjective thing. When you talk about sailboats, archaic means of transportation, speed shouldn't be an issue. The difference of speed between a boat like this and a traditional boat is probably about 100 miles a day. Even people who sail around the world, a lot of their time is actually coastal cruising. It's a big factor.